special guest today, Samuel Roukin, who did an impeccable job portraying Captain Simcoe in Turn, Washington's Spies. And I'm personally a big fan, so I'm very excited about this interview. And we have some fantastic questions already submitted, but feel free to send questions as we go. Thank you very much, Samuel, for taking time to help our aspiring actors and filmmakers turn their dreams into their full-time jobs. We appreciate it. So, of course, the first question is, how did you get started in this competitive and difficult industry to break into?
Well, I started by having fun. I started when I was a kid, just, joining local drama groups. And I was lucky where I grew up in a town called Southport near Liverpool in the northwest of England, that there was a really healthy, quite competitive amateur drama scene. So there were a couple of groups that were, led by really kind of committed people who were interested in putting on really, really good shows with kids, and kind of making us feel like we were professionals. Not that we knew, we just thought that's how you did it, but we were really kind of paces it, and but just for fun. And then but I don't think it's an accident that out of that town, that tiny town in the northwest of England that most people haven't heard of, out of, I would say of like an 8 to 10 year age gap, there are probably more than 20 actors who are working professionally and who have found a lot of success out of those two drama groups during that kind of decade of activity with kids. But I didn't do any child acting. I just did all of I didn't do any professional acting as a child. I was just involved. Once I got the bug, I was just doing it for fun. And then I did everything I could do at school. And it wasn't until I was about 14, I would say, that I'd worked out that it was a job. Like, I didn't really understand that, like, it was something that people did for a job. I just thought it was a fun thing to do. And I don't know how I thought that things came on my TV, or, I just didn't equate that to work. So it was quite late when I kind of worked out, oh, hang on a minute, people actually choose to do this over other things. And then once I knew you could, then, that was kind of me set from there. But I went to university. I studied drama. It was a very practical course. And then after that, I went and trained at Bristol Old Vic, which was super competitive to get into. It's one of the 3 drama schools in England. I trained there. It was like 14 people get accepted out of like 2,500 auditionees. And from there, I was signed by an agent just before I left drama school, actually. The agents came. They would send scouts to see our final year productions. And from there, I signed with what was then ICM in the UK, which is now Independent Talent, since changed its name. But it was, the biggest agency in London. And I was with that agent for 14 years. So that was my agent from, I was signed before I left, and then that was really it. And then shortly after I left drama school, I did my first play, which was a touring production of Taming of the Shrew. And so I did that, and then and then I just kind of worked my way up through British theatre. Spent a lot of time at the National Theatre in London, thankfully, and the Royal Court and the Old Vic in London, and Royal Shakespeare Company. Did all of that stuff, and then Mike Leigh put me in a film called Happy Go Lucky, which was a massive, really a bucket list item for me, was to work for Mike Leigh, and it was my first film job. And from there, like I would say, like that was kind of the big turning point. Once that happened, you know, you can't. I kind of like had a credibility that, like just a stamp of approval. You know, it's not anyone gets to do that, and so that plus my theatre training, and then, you know, I was off to the races with doing movies, and then I was in, and then it's just a case of like who chooses you after that. You don't have to prove that you're good anymore. It's a question of what you're right for. So once you know that had happened, I was able to, you know, just audition for the right things at the right time, and in 2011, I moved to America. I actually signed with my manager, who I'm still with, or Authentic, who are in New York and LA. We signed with him in like 2009, and then moved to America, and then I was in Cyrano de Bergerac on Broadway, and shortly after that, the pilots that finished kind of around, I guess it must have been kind of the fall of 2013. And then during that time, you know, pilot season was kicking off, and I auditioned for Turn. That was the next job. That was my next job and my first job on TV in America.
Wow.
So then, yeah, and then kind of like that launched in America. And so I've not looked back since. But I actually haven't been back to the UK to work since I moved to America. I've just been working here. But yeah, that's really the, you know, start some details, but like that's kind of the broad strokes of how it all came together.
Nice. So you've mentioned auditions, and that's one of the biggest fears for many actors, especially with the ones who are starting out. What are some secrets to being remembered by the casting agents? Because they see a lot of wonderful talent. So what are some ways to stand out? And also, what are some ways to prepare for the audition?
Right. Well, I mean, when I started auditioning, look, there was no such thing as a self-tape, which I'm giving my age. I just turned 40. I'm not scared. But you know, when there was no such thing as a self-tape. Nobody even had video cameras unless it was for fun, right? There was no iPhones. There was no, like, there were these, you know, the first thing I did a self-tape on was called a flip. I don't know what you ever saw those. They were amazing, right? They're the most fantastic little HD cameras, and they had a brilliant editing software, and then they packed it in. Anyway, I digress. But there were no except self-tapes. When I first came out of drama school, you know, it was standard procedure if you had a decent agent, you know, and we can talk about that separately. But let's say you got signed by agent. The first thing that happened is that your agent was on the phone to all of the casting directors, all the important casting directors, all the next tier casting directors, as many as they could get, and they would get you in the room for a general meeting. So by the time, and sometimes there would be a job for you to audition for, maybe then, maybe 3 years later, maybe 2 weeks later, or whatever. But everything started from those general meetings. And then they would see you in something, somebody would see you something, and then you have that reference. And so I say that because it's taken a lot of adjustment for me to tolerate self-tapes and the process of self-taping. I think it's a really unfortunate development for the actor and a very beneficial development for casting. And somewhere in the middle, we both gain something. Almost every single job, I'm going to say 90% of the jobs I've done in almost 20 years now have come at some point from an in-person interaction. So it's got harder, and it's got harder to stand out. You know, part of, like, you know, one of the great things, what was the original question? Because I'll come back to that. something about like,
how do you make yourself stand out at the audition?
so like, you know, the way I love auditioning, right? I absolutely love going in a room and auditioning. Like, and if you're not falling in love with auditioning, you're not doing it right. You have to find a way to fall in love with auditioning. Get the fear out of the way. There's nothing to be scared of. There's two big tricks that I'll tell you now that will go get you on. One, they are desperate to stop casting. They've got so many more things to worry about, whatever this job is. They've got so many more things stressing them out. This is like a pain in the ass for them, casting. They just want to get it done. So when you go in, you could be the solution to their problem. They want you to be. They're not sitting there going, oh God, another audition. They're like, please this guy be our solution, right? Because if you are, they can go home and they can move on to the next thing, right? So the power is with you, first of all, right? Because you're like, I can solve your problem, right? That's the attitude you should have. Why not me? Like, I can solve your problem if you've done your homework, you know? And then the other thing is, I always like, and this is where the kind of self-tape versus in-person. If you are lucky enough to be going in the room, right? You know, a good way to think of it is like, I used to think of it as like going for a first date in the pub, right? Like no preconceptions, right? There's just two human beings interacting. And that's an opportunity for that fizz to happen. So when you go to an audition and you're in person, it's a real opportunity to find someone new that you like. And if you go in with that open heart, it will get you so far. And if you also add to that, it's like, I want to solve your problem. You know, you're most of the way there, and then hopefully you're all right as well. And then maybe you might get the job, maybe you won't. But like, so you know, I think that, you know, apart from the obvious, which is being really, really ready, as ready as you could be with the time that you have, because that will give you confidence, like off the bat. Beyond that, like attitude, and you know, the audition is an interview to find out whether you're good to work with, as much as it is anything else, right? And you know, apart from being prepared and being excellent at what you do, like, you know, if you're going to spend 14 hours a day with someone for 6 weeks, then you better be fun, you better turn up on time, and you better take direction well, right? So, but those aren't very difficult things to do. They're just being, most of it's just being a nice person and being punctual. Like, you know, I always think like there's three reasons why someone has a job in this business. One, on time. Two, fun to work with. Three, really good. And you only need one of them to get a job. For real. Because we all know stories of people who were really, really good, but they were always late and everybody hated them. Now, sometimes people are all three. You should strive to be all three. But the very is be on time and be nice to work with. It's not hard.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But when you go to an audition and you're meeting someone in person, like, that is as much being auditioned as anything else, maybe more, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, like, you know, sometimes people, like, you know, that shouldn't be something that's difficult or you have to think about too much. But, like, be available, be, you know, to what's happening in the room, and you know, look at it as, I always like the kind of like first date scenario. You can go into first date and keep yourself to yourself, and, like, you know, you can in the waiting room. You don't have to talk to. Oh, here's another thing: don't waste energy talking to people in the waiting room in an audition. It's a trap. And there are some people who actively are looking to distract you. Like, I'm not saying you should like assume that everyone is, but like someone is. Because that's happened to me. Like, you know, people are competitive. And if you're in LA and like there's 20 dudes going for one job, like, you know, people can be, you know, it's not the norm, but it happens. And the way you protect yourself is just you don't even need to be available. It's not about anybody else but you. An audition is a completely selfish thing. You do not have to be available for other people. So don't be distracted. That's the thing. Keep your, you know, be on time, but don't be too early to give yourself time to stress out and see everybody that's coming in and out. You know, I don't know, I'm just trying to think, like, I'm just spitballing. I'm thinking about the things that happen to me when I audition. Can you hear me okay?
Now I can.
Yeah, it went a bit again, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that's the in-person thing. Now, the self-tape thing is a whole different ball game. So that, in terms of, like, standing out on a self-tape, you know, you have to be off book. There just isn't a self-tape. Nobody, you know, if you don't know your lines on a self-tape, I know people say you can have the script in your hand and just forget it. And if you can't do it, then you haven't had enough time to prepare and you need to ask for more time. Because most of the time the deadlines they have a little bit of wiggle room. And if you have particularly if you have a representative, you know, you can always ask for more time. And they'll tell you, like, I have an audition that I was supposed to do today. And I knew I was doing this, and I've actually been working the last 2 days. And I didn't have time to prepare for it. And I could have forced it through and done it today and not done a very good job. And would almost certainly wouldn't have got the job. So I said, you know, can I have till the end of the week? And they said, no, you can have till Thursday. And I was like, well, that's an extra day, so I'll take it, thanks. Right? But if I didn't ask, I wouldn't get that. So you've got to know your lines. It's got to be lit well. You need a backdrop like this, or a light blue one. And you've got to have a decent camera. I don't know. I have the newest phone. Because I like my home button, but you know, iPhones can do a really good job if they've got decent cameras on them now. I use for my tapes. I'll pull it out for you. It's right here. I mean, this is an expensive camera, but one job got, and you can through it, right? So this is, I'm using, this isn't the newest version of this, but this is a Sony A6300. It's a 4K camera, and so it gets a lot of information, or at least, you know, like enough, and then it gives you, you know, a really high quality picture, and you can, you know, make it right, and it, you know, it deals with light very well. I also have, the other thing is, you need an external microphone. This is my voiceover world I have here, but this is a directional mic. They're really not very expensive, and they just plug into your camera, and I think you can get them for iPhones as well. Or you could probably just use the adapter on this and plug it into your iPhone or whatever. But you need one of these, because if the sound isn't good, it doesn't matter how good you look. The sound just has to be excellent. No issue, you know. So these are not ways to stand out, but they are certainly ways that if you don't have this stuff dialed in, it won't even make it. You know, you got to remember, like, most people are watching auditions on this, not on their computer.
Yeah.
They're like. You know, they're like sitting on their couch, like sometimes if they like it, they'll go, or maybe if you're lucky and they're going through and is high enough on the panel. But oftentimes you'll be watching on this. So your only chance of it making it, if they're watching it on this, is if the quality of your tape is excellent. So when it comes to self-taping, you have to do whatever you can afford, obviously. Like, you've got to do it and take it seriously. And for a long time, like I said, it was hard for me to transition between normal auditions and self-taping and to take them as seriously, right? I used to think it was like a giveaway, right? And it was like, well, it's not the real thing. Like, they'll see me on tape, and, you know, the bottom line is, like, when you do a self-tape, you got to turn up like you're in the room with the producer studio who's going to make the decision. And that's how you got to get yourself amped up for it in a way that's difficult in your living room or garage or whatever, wherever you are. So like, so yeah, it's got to be lit well. It's got to sound good. You've got to know your lines, and you've got to. And then I would suggest always having someone. You can do it by recording your lines, you know, on a device and playing off your own lines. I've done that before in a pinch. But if you can have a reader who isn't distracting. So another tip on taping. I probably shouldn't give this away, but the person that's reading with you, their job is not to act with you, right? And if they're new to it, you can tell them your job is to feed me lines. That's it. Like, oftentimes, like I do, like, I don't even have them make eye contact because I want them looking at the script and being fast on cues. Right? I know lines, and then I'm just taking my eye line to the top of their head where their eyes would be, and I'm use my imagination. Like, they are, you know, there'll be something in their voice to respond to, but it's not a two-person. An audition is not a two-person scene. Like, it's all about you. And it's unnaturally about you, right? The other thing is fill the gaps, right? When you're doing a self-tape versus doing a scene. When you're doing the scene on the job, let's say it's for a TV or a film, there is absolutely no way in the world that the whole scene is going to be on you. Impossible. If it's a two-person scene, it's at least 50% of the time going to be on the other person. So what does that mean? It means that an audition, a self-tape, is entirely unnatural. And it's asking way more of you, right, than a scene ever would. Not only that, but when you're doing a scene, you may do, let's say you do 5 takes, right, of one scene. Well, they're going to pick the best seconds and piece them all together of all of the takes. Again, on a self-tape, you're being asked to do a perfect one, right? Which, even if you did it on set, they don't use it. They use pieces of the other ones too, because it's got to play off the other person. And so take the pressure off yourself, right? And at the same time, know that in the listening moments, the camera is 100% watching, right, the whole time. And that takes practice, but I would say watch yourself with a critical eye until you get really well versed in camera technique. Just watch it and say, do I believe me? And if it's hard to be objective, ask someone who's not a friend. Maybe like somebody you know, like, does this look like a real human being listening? If the answer's no, start to figure out why. And if it's no to yourself, like, just, you don't have to tell anyone, but you do have to, like, go, well, what am I doing? What am I connecting when I'm doing that and when I'm listening? What's going on in my head? Because the one thing about camera work is it will 100% find out what you're thinking. It knows if you're bullshitting. It really, really knows if you're bullshitting. So if you're thinking anything about the external, in other words, what effect you want to have or what you want to look like while you're doing something, we'll know. Everybody knows. And they might not be able to put their finger on what it is, but they just won't believe you. So your only job is to go deeper. Mm-hmm. And the one thing, this was said to me, I can't even remember who said it, it was so long ago. If you're ever like having a problem, like getting a scene done, or if you're ever having a problem, which I have in my career more times than I can remember, about like wanting to laugh during a scene, like going up, the only fix, and really the fix to all of the problems you might be having in a scene, is listen harder. Listen harder. Because when you're really, really listening, it's not about you. You're just absorbing. And if you've done your own work, if you know your lines and you've learned like the triggers for speaking, the impulses for speaking, if you're listening hard, it will just come out. Because the reaction will follow, you know, the thing. I mean, it helps if it's decent writing, for sure. Sometimes it's not. You need to do a bit of pasting. But like, if it's decent writing, you know, there's a cause and effect.
With staying in character, it must be very difficult to stay in character when it's a scene where, for example, where again Simcoe is being tortured, and I'm sure there's constantly reapplied SFX, makeup, blood, the fully choreographed dance in terms of fighting. How do you stay in character when all of this is constantly being done? So it takes away, it looks very realistic on camera, but it takes away the realism while you're acting. How do you stay in character during these kind of scenes?
Well, some of it takes that away and some of it helps, honestly. Like, you know, I guess like, I mean, that's about like, this is similar to the thing I was saying about auditioning, when I said, like, don't be distracted by people, by other actors, right? You don't have to be like, you really don't have to be nice to anybody except the people. I'm not saying you should be actively not nice. I'm just saying you have to give yourself over to anybody except when you walk into the room. You should have an open heart and be authentic, right? But in terms of like, you have to protect yourself. And one of the things, like the things that distract me, there's things that make it harder for me to do my job are if I'm tired and if I'm distracted. And one of the things that's definitely going to happen on a film set is that you are definitely going to be tired. And if it doesn't happen today, it'll happen tomorrow. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow, by the end of the week, I promise you'll be exhausted. It is just tiring. You know, 14-hour days, which are typical, are tiring. And whether it's a small scene or a very active scene, you know, it is always going to be tiring. But within that, you have the ability to manage your energy, right? So I think it's part of your job as an actor, and it's something you kind of let you go, and is to know how to like preserve your energy, so that when you are in the mix of doing a scene and it's going on a long time, there's a lot of effects, and particularly with blood, you know, with blood, like it gets very sticky very quick. It becomes uncomfortable and itchy, and you can feel irritable as a result of something physical that's happening, right? The more tired you are, the harder that is to like, but if you've preserved your energy well, and if you've eaten well, and if you are caffeinated, if that's something you need to be, like, and if you are, then you'll probably be okay. Like, I think the other thing is, like, there is, you know, the question was about how to stay in the scene when all that stuff's going on, right? And I think, again, it's like, it's all the same stuff. It's like being prepared and saving your energy for when it matters, right? So, like, as long as you're prepared and know what you're doing, then you're not going to be distracted. Like, do I know my lines? Do I know what I'm doing? Like, you know, knowing where you have to be and what you have to do and where the marks that you have to hit and the, you know, what the scene is, and hopefully by the time you're involved in that bit with all the blood and everything flying in, you've already rehearsed it and know what you're doing. And, you know, it's just a case of when roll camera being all in, you know, and those are the moments when you use your reserves of energy and don't waste them being entertaining in you know, in the chair with your friends and whatever. Like, just, you know, keep it calm, relaxed, so that you have energy when you get on set, that everybody needs you to. That's what everybody's waiting for. That's why they keep you relaxed and keep you well fed and watered and give you beds in your, like, third of a trailer or whatever you get, you know, like, so that you can, even in the worst trailers, there's a camp bed of some description, so that you can take naps and hopefully then you don't get distracted. I don't really have a problem getting distracted, you know, or finding it hard to stay in character. I think, like, I think it's really about preparation and then preserving energy. And I think as long as you're taking care of those, I don't think it's too much of an issue. Not for me, anyway.
Mm-hmm. We have a question that popped out since we're going through some scenes. We have a question that came up with a scene where the duel scene with Woodfall.
Oh, yeah.
How were you preparing for that? And it's a fantastic scene. There's so many different emotions on your face at that moment. Yeah. You can read so much. It's an amazing scene. So how did you prepare?
As far as I remember, Jamie and I, that was season 1. Typically, Jamie and I would, like most of us in season 1, it kind of trailed off a little bit as the show went on for various reasons. But in season 1, we had very little distractions when we were, like, in the filming process, and we rehearsed outside of work a lot. It was like we were like a theatre company in that respect. Like, we would meet up in each other's apartments and houses and rehearse the night before. We'd film all day, and then we'd eat dinner together at someone's house, and, like, you work the scenes so that we were hitting the ground running. Because you don't always get rehearsal time. In fact, rarely, if I'm honest. Like, you know, you'll get on the day, you always get to, you know, figure it out. But so I think we probably would have rehearsed it a little bit. But the funny thing about that day is that it was the day the polar vortex was hitting Virginia. Like, it was genuinely gonna, like, drop 30 degrees in temperature, start snowing, and we made the stupid decision retrospectively that they would remove their jackets to duel. And it was fine up until lunch, when it was just snow candles and fake snow, and then pretty quickly the temperature started dropping and we were stuck in our shirt. A lot of that stuff that's going on is kind of like real environmental. Yeah. But it was, again, like, it was preparation. Like, you know, Jamie and I are very similar. Like, when we turn up on set, like, there's just no question about whether we know our lines or not. It's just like, you know, that's like putting on your underpants in the morning, or not, if that's your preference. But, like, you know, it's like we were just ready. So when we turned up, we were free to play. You know, we were always available to play and figure out and, you know, try stuff, and it wouldn't work, and then, you know, and you just kind of you kind of, like, step by step work through the things that are going to happen, and then try and have inject as much as possible. and then eventually you happen across something that's working, and then it's just a question of revisiting and repeating it, and being able to deliver it consistently so that it's captured from all the different places they need to capture it. All of the work, most of the work about, you know, those scenes and finding the magic in those scenes happens first thing in the morning when you rehearse it, because very quickly once you start any piece of it, it kind of has to stay the same. And you have a little bit of leeway on your coverage, so you can play around when the coverage is on you, and then maybe like things like the wink or those kinds of things, like they maybe come in like at the last minute, like, oh, just try this, or you'll do something and the director will say, oh, I like that, but try this instead, you know, or, you know, but it's, so you kind of just, it's a team effort really. I find like most of the time, you know, once, if you're prepared and you turn up on set, and once you're around the environment, we were in the woods and we were by a lake and we did have things that actually fired, even though they just flashed or whatever. Doing all that, like, ideas come to you. But again, it's about preparation. Like, you don't get to play unless you earn it. And you have to earn it by being ready. So you learn your lines and you think about it, but you don't plan it. That's a good bit of advice. Don't plan. In my opinion, it's death to the scene if you come in with a plan of how you're going to do it. If you get lucky enough to get the job, learn your lines, have a brain full of ideas, but don't plan it. Don't plan how you're going to respond or react. Like, be available. And I think if you're coming really open and available and able to listen and adjust to your surroundings and be affected by your surroundings, right? And see, you know, and be mindful, you know, take a mindfulness approach to it, and you know, start to notice things around you. You know, it's a toolbox. Your surroundings is a toolbox. The other actor is, you know, part of that. You're that for them, right? It's a two, like, and just, I think being available, and, you know, that's where the magic happens, is when you're like just really prepared and then available to play. And it's just play. It's just playtime.
Let's get to the villain part. So when you are playing a villain,
yeah,
do you actually, like, do you find excuses for the character? Do you relate to the character? Or do you just relate to the emotional responses of that character? How do you get into that character?
Well, I mean, so the villain is an archetype, right? Mm-hmm. The villain doesn't describe a person. So, I don't really think of it like, I mean, I don't, what's the best way to answer this question? I think like when you know, when I see roles like that, well, you're obviously referring to the big one I played, like, look, you know, where the buck stops is he doesn't think he's evil, you know. And very few people, you know, are like, you know, I'm just gonna be really mean to this, like that. It's never about the thing that, like, people are what they do, of course, right? You can describe a person by the things that they do, but that doesn't describe the motivations for doing them. And you know, I think you've got to be so curious as an actor. Like, you've just got to be constantly curious. Like, what? Like, asking why? Yes, but why? Okay, fine, but why? You know, you've got to be a kid. You've got to be a toddler. You know, with characters. You know, yes, but why? But why? You know, and it's like, you know, it's like the onion. Like, you'll never get to the middle of it, ever. But, you know, it's your job to study human beings, right? And I trained in the same place where Daniel Day-Lewis trained, and we had some of the same tutors. And, you know, there's a very, like, you know, obviously Daniel's process is like famous. Some call it method. You know, people talk about him staying in character the whole time. But really what it is, you know, and by the way, that's, you know, that's a luxury you earn. Like most actors would love to do that, by the way, but don't have the time, the resources, the patience from the filmmakers. Like, you know, you have to earn that, the privilege to work in that way. But what I will say is that there's two reasons why in my opinion, he works in that way. One of them is it's just curiosity, right? He wants to know everything, because the more he knows about the person he's portraying, the more he understands how they would behave in any given situation, right? And the other reason is that's what it takes for him to be relaxed and at peace and able to just respond in a scene. And some actors don't need to do all of that to get there, right? That's what he needs to do. But at the core of it, it's an investigation of a human being, right? And so, in answer to your question, I don't think in terms of good, bad, villain, hero. Like, I just want to know what's in here. Like, what, like, with someone like Simcoe, you know, in like the sort of, I've said this before in other interviews about it, but like when I was talking with the producers about how to do that part, I said there's two ways we can go here. Like, obviously, like, you've written him doing really terrible things, and we can roll with that, and he can be like an atypical, like, nasty person. I was like, it'd be interesting if he's like the nicest person you've ever met, and he's doing those things. In other words, like, he is intrinsically trying to do good. It's just that moral compass is in an entirely different place to yours or mine, right? So his frame of justice, his frame of acceptable behavior is different. But in his heart, he's doing the best he can, right? And doing, like, for England, for himself, you know? And in the end, like, you know, in the end, like, primarily, everyone's pretty similar, right? It is just these, like, experiences of our lives that build up and things that we're taught that mold us one way or another. And I think as long as you're, like, so there's no real trick, like, to approaching that. But I certainly don't approach it in terms of archetypes or boxing somebody in. It's just not because they're not. Like, he is the villain. Like, I'm not saying, oh, he's not the villain. But, like, there's nothing there for me as an actor. Like, I can't do anything with that. Like, if someone gave me the note, like, make him more villainous, like, that's an unplayable note, right? I can't do anything with that. So, but if they say, like, you know, he should be a bit more educational in this moment, you know, or, you know, can he I don't know, make up anything, but, like, you know, active things I can do, like, but I can't, you know, can he be a bit more scary? That's not really about him, that's about the other person. Do you mean, can he just show the blade a little bit, you know? Or, you know, like, it's the difference between, like the one of the scenes that people remember is when he stabs the guy in the neck at dinner. And there's a version of that scene where he's, like, eyeballing, which we didn't do, but, like, where he's, like, eyeballing that guy the whole time, making him feel uncomfortable, putting his knife on the table, waving it in front of him like a villain, and then, like, and then like, you know, and then, like, seeing this, like, anger build up and then, like, stab him or something, right? We don't do that. How more interesting is it that he's like just letting this all process and no one knows what he's thinking, and then he looks at what he did. Far more interesting.
That was a great.
But it's just about like, how does this guy do stuff, right? And if you're asking why, and really wanting to know, you'll figure it out. But it's not, you know, villain, lover, hero, they're all the same.
How do you keep the balance between, and sometimes maybe it happens when the director sees it one way and you have to follow the director, but you're feeling differently about the reaction of the character. Does that happen? And how do you keep that balance between the respect towards the director and towards your craft?
Well, I think understanding the hierarchy as an actor is important. I think it takes a lot of pressure off that position. Like knowing that ultimately it's out of your hands is good, right? So at the end of the day, like, let's say you get your own way and you get to do exactly the way you want. You don't get to choose the takes or the pieces.
Yeah.
And if you actively just do the thing you want to do and then don't do the thing that they want to do, they'll just show the back of your head. So the solution to that is what? It's compromise, right? So, and usually, if that's happening, there's a conversation that's missing. If there's two very opposing ideas, then egos got in the way, and, you know, like, quite honestly, like, there are times when someone will have an opinion about what you're doing or what they want you to do. And in my experience, if you seek to understand before you like resist it or whatever, you'll find out why they think that. Oftentimes, you know, I had an idea about once I get on set, like an idea about how I want to do something, and there'll be a practical reason why it won't work that I didn't know about. Or there'll be a writing reason that I didn't know about, that maybe it shows something that they want to save until another episode. Or maybe it's like, maybe I didn't quite understand the status of the characters in this scene, right? You know, sometimes it's like, you know, I would say like a lot of the time it's because I want to do it a certain way, but it's because I didn't understand something properly, right? It's okay to not get it. Like, you're not supposed to know everything. That's why there's a team. That's why you have a director. And I think as long as everybody has the right intentions and as long as it's not personal, quite often there's no reason why everybody can't have their way. Like, I'm trying to think of the old saying, like, if they have the thing you don't want to do, they'll use it, right? So I think like understanding that, like, if you don't want to do something that a director wants you to do, you just have to have a very compelling argument. You know, you can't just say I'm not doing it. It's not good enough, right? Never a reason. You've got to have a very good justification for it. So preparation,
Yeah.
right? If you should be the expert on your character, right? But that doesn't mean you're the expert on everybody else's character, and you're certainly not taking an overall view of the storytelling. And so that's why often when there's a misalignment of opinion about how one thing should be done or not, it's because you're not on the same page. So for me, when I want one thing, a director wants the other, the first thing I think is, oh, we're thinking in different ways about this scene. Let's figure that out first. Let's make sure we understand the same things about the scene. and you might learn something, right? So that, and you should go into that with like, oh, I'm going to learn something. If you don't learn something about, let's say you clearly do know more about the scene than the director in this case, right? Then you can help them. You can help them, like say, look, you know, because very often on a TV show, if you're a regular on a TV show, the directors have been there for a week, and you've been there for 3 years. So it's possible or likely that they haven't watched all the episodes, right? So there might be a very good reason why you don't do something. It might be because you've already done it, right? And you don't want to play the same card twice. Or it might be because something happened that means that it wouldn't make sense. Like it wouldn't follow it wouldn't follow a course of events. Like it would have to be justified in a different way. So that's how I deal with it. I deal with it by like figuring out how we can get on the same page, first of all. Because if you understand the scene, if you agree on what's happening in the scene, then there's then you're playing within the same tramline, right? But I would say like most of the time it doesn't happen like that. And most of the time when there are disagreements, you know, for me it's always like either an authenticity thing. I just don't believe a human being would do that. Like if it doesn't jive with me, like I just don't think human beings behave in that way, I'll say it. And there's usually like once you justify it in those terms, if you're right, you know, then people kind of go, oh right, yeah, you're probably right, you know. And then, but most of the time, why not try it? Like if it doesn't work, most of the time I just do it. Like most of the time I'm just like, sure, try it that way, because you might learn something. You might not, the thing that you're working on might not be good, but then like another moment might happen as a result that's really useful in the edit. So I think another thing, like it's not about you most of the time. I think the more you think of it, it's not about you, and the more you kind of think of it in the context of the whole, like again, it takes pressure off you. Like it's, you don't have to be said, first of all, and then it also makes you available to other people's ideas, which I think is really, really important.
Who are some of your mentors that you look up to, and do you follow any specific acting techniques?
I mean, it's been like, it's so like, I mean, I still like, when I worked with Mike Leigh, that's a very that was a very formative part of my career. It followed on from my training at Bristol Old Vic, and so it got deeper. That kind of real like lived-in character study is something that I'm like always striving towards. So again, like that human investigation and like really understanding how character makes characters tick. But I couldn't name the technique. And I think, you know, if you've been working long enough, it becomes your own thing. It's like having a toolbox and learning how to use all those tools. And in the end, no one else will use them like you. You know, one of the great things about training is that you do get to try out lots of different techniques and lots of different approaches, which is a better word for them, really. They're like ways in. And again, like the reason why there's so many is because it's all about what gets you there, right? It doesn't really matter. Like when you do it, like no one's going to know whether your method or whether you just picked up that morning. If they believe it, they believe it. So it's what gets you there. And in terms of like actors, like who are mentors, I don't know, like I mean, I don't really have any, like, but I'm constantly impressed by actors. Like, I'm constantly impressed by people I've never heard of, people I knew but didn't know they were that, like, didn't know that, like, they do something that's, like, amazing, like, and they're across the range of cheesy stuff to like super serious art house stuff, you know, like but you know, I'm a very easy audience member. Like I'm being told a story, and quite often, regardless of how bad it is, I'll go along with it. But like I do really love, I mean, I'm just a sucker for authenticity. So but I've been really lucky, like in theatre, to work with some amazing actors. You know, like Sean Phillips and Michael Gambon and Matthew McFadden, who everyone knows from Succession now. You know, he's like, you know, Matthew was like, you know, like a big theatre actor in England. You know, like, you know, one of my best mates is Rory Kinnear, and who everyone knows from the Black Mirror Pig episode. But you know, that guy's like won 2 Oliviers and you know, and done so many amazing performances in film. You know, I'm friends with a lot of people I really, really look up to and respect. And I mean, even like on Turn, like I loved, like we had such an incredible cast. Like, I mean, like no one was not doing everything they could to be as authentic and true as possible. You think of like, you just go through the cast, like Angus McFadden, Jamie Bell, Megan Warner, like Heather Lind, Daniel Henshaw. I mean, everybody was just like Ian Khan doing Washington. Like, I mean, everyone was all in. I'm like, you know, big, small, famous, not famous. Like, I'm constantly impressed by actors. It's all about authenticity. I like to forget that I'm watching an actor. I like watching a human being, you know.
You brought up family, so we will get to that question about challenging situations where you have to portray a romantic scene and you have your spouse at home and you have to be authentic. So how do you feel like you're being faithful to your spouse, yet authentic with your scene partner?
I think you have to be respectful of your partner and understand that when you sit in a theatre at the end of the job and you both together watching it, like, is that going to be weird or not? And some people just don't have, some partners just don't have a problem with that. They're just like, oh, whatever, you know, it's not real. And some partners are very sensitive to that and they don't want to see you in that thing. And I think knowing who you're with is important, and being respectful of how they feel about you doing it. And so, you know, in our house, I'm very clear about what is involved in the job. Sometimes it's a necessary conversation before I audition for it. You know, I think you have to value relationships, or if you value your relationship, then you have to respect the person's feelings about it. But you're not, I mean, we're assuming you're not being unfaithful, right? We're assuming you're going to work and doing your job. And as long as that's the case, then there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to worry you. And I will say that when you're doing romantic scenes, they're not romantic because, one, it's a choreographed dance from the head turn to the lean in to, you know, like to where your bodies are in relation to each other and the camera, like how many thrusts, if any, like how do you pull off the fake layer of underwear, like, you know, how do you keep that covered from, it's all very technical. Yeah. It's not an organic moment. You're just making it look like that. Yeah. So, and also there's some smelly, sweaty crew, like with cameras in your face. Like it's not it's not sexy. So,
I think you calm down all the spouses in this sentence.
like it really isn't. Like, I mean, unless you're into that, like being watched a lot, then sure. But even then, like, nothing's really happening. So, you know, I mean, in all seriousness, like, I think like there is a serious part of it, which is like as far as you're concerned as an actor, you just get on with it. One thing I always do is that I think it's always important to connect with the person you're doing it with, like the other actor. Like, I think it's very important to connect, and you can't bank on the fact that they're going to do it with you. But I certainly always make sure that we are clear about what our limits are and what our bar is, and know and understand, like especially now and in the day and age that we're in, and post Me Too, and SAG-AFTRA have put in a lot of effort to like safeguard this now, and I'm glad for that, and because I've seen it when like you know, people are just kind of like gently asked to just do stuff that they don't feel comfortable with, really in a position to say no, and everything should just be very clear. And it's not complicated stuff. Like, everything needs to be very clear. It needs to be clear at home, and it needs to be clear at work. And I think like as long as it's all very like and you're being honest about it, and I think if you're being respectful, if everybody's being respectful, or at least you're only in control of how respectful you are. And so I think like, you know, like just be open and like respectful, and make sure that everybody's comfortable. Make sure you're comfortable. Don't do anything you're not comfortable doing. You know, and if you feel compromised, you're being compromised. Like, if you feel uncomfortable, that's a feeling to be honored and voiced. You are under no obligation to do anything you do not feel comfortable doing. Nobody can fire you because you won't do it. They just can't do it. They can't fire you. Yeah. But there shouldn't be any surprises. The other thing, if there's a surprise, somebody's being naughty. Or you didn't read the script, which is unlikely, or you didn't read the contract, which is unlikely. So if something happens on set, if you're playing a role and there's no scene where the two characters have vigorous sex, and then you turn up on set and someone hands you some pages, then it's weird, right? So don't just say yes. Like, say, hang on a second, what's this? You know? But again, like, you know, these are like, it's getting easier to have conversations, right? But I think, like, in terms of like your partner and whatever, like, that's about you and your relationship. Like, and I think you know, if you have a healthy relationship, then you're gonna be respectful of that person and have a healthy conversation about it. And ask the question. Just ask your partner, do you want to know when I'm doing it? Do you want to know exactly what happens? Do you want a picture of the actor that I'm doing it with? Do you not? Like, do you want to just watch it? Or when we watch it, do you want me to tell you when we're watching it and then you don't have to watch it? Because that's legitimate too. Like, you know, so everything's different. But for you as an actor, you're in control of you, and I think it's pretty easy to be respectful of other people, and it is just like a sensitive area, and I think it's getting easier to be respectful about it. So, okay. It shouldn't, you know, it's not, but it's not, I can tell it's not sexy. It's not sexy. Yeah. Okay. It's cold. It's usually really cold. Yeah. It's usually really cold. Sets are drafty. You know, you spend a lot of time with the dressing gown and like Robin, keep warm. Sexy.
You've convinced every spouse. I guarantee everybody's comfortable now.
Well, that's my experience of it.
With all the emotions that you're experiencing as you are getting into characters, how do you keep yourself in a comfortable state emotionally, just as a person outside of work, after having to experience all this at work?
Well, another great piece of advice that came years ago was wipe your feet on the way in and wipe your feet on the way out. Right? So you leave whatever's going on at home once you walk in onto the lot or into the theater or wherever, for however many hours you're there, the best you can, leave it at home. And in fact, acting's a brilliant thing for that, is because it's so all-consuming that it give you the opportunity to absorb yourself in something that isn't you, that isn't your life, right? And you can, whenever you're working in art, it's surrounded by fascinating characters. Don't make it about you. Make it like, just find, like, just escape all of that, right? And that'll make you like more focused on the, and the same as the other way around. So like, I think, like, you know, whatever you need to do to metaphorically leave it at work, you got to do it. And I think, again, like, it's usually like not making it about you. Like, you know, I'm lucky, like I have a wife and 2 kids, and at any given moment of my life, there are 100 things that I'm expected to be doing that are not to do with me, right? And that are on my list to do that are not to do with me. That, like, if I just like go, right, now I've done that, now I have to concentrate on these boys and dinner, and like do they have what they need, or whatever it is, whatever it is, supposed to play with them now, or, you know, I think like diving back into the people in your life is a really good thing. Like, it helps you like take it out of yourself. But in terms of the big emotional stuff, I mean, look, you know, like, the bigger thing is that it's tiring. Like, when you like go, when you're doing like really heavily, you know, extremities of emotion in scenes, you know, you don't just do it once if you're filming. You do it like a bunch of times, and it's just exhausting. So the bigger thing about that is that you're just tired. Like, come out of like a big, like, emotional, if you're crying in a scene or experiencing grief or anger or any kind of pain, like it, you know, or if you did a big fight scene, you're just, usually you're sore after that as well. And you know, and the main thing is you've got to be nice to yourself. You know, sometimes I think ahead and I'm like, I'm gonna want a really nice dinner tonight after all this, or I'm really gonna want like a really nice glass of whiskey, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, make sure I'm stocked up. You know, like, if I'm gonna finish work at a reasonable time, I'll be like, I'm gonna make sure I'm either going somewhere nice to eat or I have nice food to eat. Like, it's really simple, like, life stuff. Like, you just gotta like, and you know, it's like a hard day, and if you've been through those emotions and you've been authentic, like, well, if you've ever grieved for anyone or you've ever broken up with anyone, then you know it takes a toll, right? So I think the trick is the first thing is to like not pretend it isn't happening. Like if you really were authentically going through that, then you genuinely felt some stuff, and so you've got to be nice to yourself. I think you can't stop. You can't like pretend you didn't go through it or feel it. I think that's when like, and I think also like knowing that it isn't you is important, right? I think like if you've been really, really sad or really, really abusive, I think it's to go, well, that's not who I am, right? And so I'm not going to go home and be abusive to my family, and I'm not going to abuse myself, right? I'm going to be nice to myself because and I'm grateful that I'm not that, right? And so that's, you know, I think knowing, you know, having some other things to focus on is important, you know.
A lot of actors are struggling with having to find an agent when they're building up a reel, but building a reel is difficult without an agent. So it's kind of like they're caught in between. So if you have some advice about that, that would be fantastic. You just had a different path.
Well, I mean, I mean, I think you have to look for, like, nothing's gifted to you. Like, really, nothing is gifted to you. And I think, you know, like anybody that seems like that things happen for them overnight, there's just forget it. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Like, something was going on that led them to that moment. Like, you know, like, I mean, Jamie Bell is a great example of that, right? He didn't train drama school or anything like that, and everyone, you know, he got Billy Elliot, and then that was it. Well, yeah, but what was he doing before Billy Elliot, right? I mean, I believe, like, he was dancing, like, a lot. Like, he was like an incredible dancer and performer and working on all of that stuff. He just wasn't getting paid for it, but he was like working on it, right? So there's always a journey. So, and he was in that position, audition for the movie, because he was doing something that he really loved doing. And then that, like, put him in a position where when the opportunity came along, he was available. I am the wrong person, as you say, to ask about how, when you didn't train at somewhere reputable that provides a platform for you to get signed, and you're not already working, and you don't have a body of work, how do you, like,
it's a tough bridge to cross.
Yeah, and, like, my God, it's hard enough even after all the work I've done to get hired still. So knowing, like, so you have my full compassion for, like, if you're trying to do it without that. And my advice to you would be, don't try and do it without that.
Yeah.
Don't. Why would you put yourself through that? You are, like, I don't know. I would have to, like, I don't know what the, sorry, I just whacked my table. But I don't know what the avenue is for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not involved, I must stop kicking this table. If you're not involved in something that gives you a platform, which leads me to my only piece of advice, which is, like, find a platform. And sometimes that means doing something yourself. That means putting something, like, I mean, look, this is like when we're out of this pandemic, right? Back into cloud cuckoo land. Like, right now, honestly, my advice, somebody might differ with this, I would say forget about it for a minute. Just get on with your life. Get happy. Go and just, like, you know, if there isn't any work for you, like, work on yourself. Like get your house in order. Like, make sure you can eat. Make sure you have someone to hire every day. Like, that's what's important right now. Like, being an actor right now should be the last thing on your list, because we're only just getting started, and it's very, very, it's a tight club right now, and every single actor, at a minimum, apart from voiceover work, has been out of work in front of the camera for 6 months. So if you're not already on the list, you ain't getting in. Like, it's just not going to happen. So take the pressure off. Don't worry about reels. Don't worry about all that stuff. I would say, you know, but I would, like, what you could do, which would be useful, is to start building relationships with people that can help you. And it also depends on where you live, right? You know, maybe you have, if you live in, like, one of the 4 places in the world, or at least on this side of the world, London, you know, New York, Chicago for theatre, and LA, then you are in hubs, right? If you're in Philadelphia, there's things happening, but it's not where the decisions are primarily made, right? So, you know, how do you connect? Maybe you need to connect on a local level, right? Who's doing the local casting in Penn? I don't know who they are, but like, you know, or in Virginia, who are you? Where are you? Like, but like, find out who the local casting people are in Philadelphia, or I'm assuming that's the main hub of where things happen in Pennsylvania. Like, so then, like, sorry, where?
Yeah.
Where,
but
sorry?
In Pittsburgh, we have a lot of things going on. And
fantastic.
Now he's actually coming back to things. We're having Adam Sandler movie right now in plans. So,
brilliant.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, knowing who those people are, then, yeah, then maybe I'm like, maybe don't, look, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying, like, how I'm talking to you like I'm talking to a friend. Like, I would say, chill out about it for a minute. And make relationships.
Yeah.
You know, make relationships, not reels. And because you only need one friend that can help, right? You don't need 20 or 100. You know, if you live in Philadelphia or wherever it is, or if you live in Virginia, or you live, like, find out who the person is that you need to know. Get to know him. Be nice. Be kind. Offer him something. I don't know. Say you'll help out. Like, make a relationship, and then you'll create opportunities. And from those opportunities, something will happen if you're good enough, and you've done those kind of human things, like, you know, offering help, being available, being up for anything. Like, I mean, I would say, like, I mean, I might get told off for this, but, like, you know, I will say that if you want to break into bigger acting stuff, that the background work is, it's not mostly on the whole a stepping stone to that. So it's definitely a way to learn what happens on a film set. It is definitely a way to earn a few dollars, and it's definitely to be around it. But it's very hard to be pulled out of that pool of background artists and make the transition into, like, the featured artists. And so once you've used, I would say, once you feel like you've had the learning experience that you wanted to have from doing something like that, I would say you are going to have to decide at some point when you're going to stop doing that, in my opinion.
It's actually a very common question about background, whether people should continue.
I think if you've never been on a film set before and you want to see what really happens, like, you should do it. Like, I don't know how else you're going to find out unless, you know, unless you manage to book a job straight away doing the, like, doing, you know, higher up stuff. But, like, I think, like, I think it serves a purpose in that respect. And I think it can be really fun. I think it can be incredibly boring on the whole. It is, I think, like, but I think at least the first few times it's going to be fun. You might get out with some cool people, meet some cool people. Like I say, earn some money and be on a film set. And see what happens. Like, that is really, really useful. And then you understand the language and and you can watch people work, see the pressures they're under and how they handle it and how they behave and what works, what doesn't. You know, you learn a lot. It's just not going to be that stepping stone, you know. So I think, like, that, knowing knowing what it is and what it isn't is important. But I would say, like, for me, like, in a nutshell, to wrap it up, like, I think, you know, people are thriving for human connection right now. And so to think that you're going to, like, break into into an acting career via a digital tool, in my opinion, isn't the smartest way to go about it. So I would figure out, how can you make human connection with someone that can help you?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic advice. I mean, it's 6 degrees of separation world, so
I think it's
nice.
I think like, really, like, you know, casting directors are the gateway. to jobs as an actor. And so, like, you know, if you're going to start local, which I would recommend, right, then you have to figure out where they find new actors from, and wherever you are, and whether they go to theatre, wherever you are, if we ever go to the theatre again, I don't know, or like whether they like if you made a short film, or whether they'll watch, you know, something that you've done. Maybe you see a show maybe you see a TV show that they cast, or a film that they cast, and you see a role in that you could have played. You know, maybe I mean, I'm just thinking outside. I'm thinking like off the top of my head, but maybe you do like an audition for one of those roles, and they can get an idea of like what it is that you have to offer, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of casting directors now are pivoting to education, right? Like I know, like Erica Arvold, who's the
and who spoke very highly of you.
Yeah, she's wonderful, and you know, I've done some work with her on the educational side, and she
told me you're very nice.
Yeah,
you're very nice and a great actor. So
she's amazing. She has this whole training program. She does a load of casting in Atlanta and Virginia. Like she's a really important casting director now in particularly TV world, because you know she gets the job done so well. And I have seen her take people who have been in her training and put them in front of directors and get jobs. And then once you got one, you can get another and another and another. Like you become validated, and then you can audition for other things. So I think looking for opportunities to train and educate yourself, and making sure people that, you know, either they can offer you a platform if you're good enough, and or they are connected with people that will do that, or there's some sort of, I would just, if you're doing any kind of training, that it leads to something, right? Unless you are literally just interested in working on your craft and there's no other way to do it, if you're going to pay for training, make sure that there's some sort of showcase at the end of it. Like, you know, or you're with somebody, the showcase is like, if you're doing something with Erica Arbold, who's a big character, you don't need anything at the end of it, right? Because the whole thing is a showcase for Erica, who, if she likes you and sees potential, will either call her friends about you or use you yourself. That's just one example, right? So, but I think like looking for those opportunities is a good idea too.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I didn't do that, but that's what I would do.
No, but that's also great advice. Working with people who eventually decide whether you're going to be the chosen one on set. So absolutely, taking trainings and classes, and you know, our local casting agents are also, and casting directors are also offering a lot of fantastic classes, which when we see, we try to post. So no, definitely a lot of great opportunities where you feature yourself by working hard. So
that's right.
Which adjustments did you have to make, again, besides the self-tapes that you don't particularly enjoy, but during the COVID era? Yeah. Huh?
I do enjoy self-tapes now. I'm saying it was a transition though. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I had to go on that journey. Like they're not my favorite way of auditioning, but I think you have to learn to, because it's how we get jobs right now. You know?
Yeah. But what other changes took place for you as an actor because of the COVID situation?
I actually haven't been on camera for a long time. Like it's been a very quiet 24 months. So I was already adjusting. I already had a busy voiceover and book line of work going on. So I'm one of the lucky ones. during the pandemic. Like, I've, you know, had weeks, obviously, like everybody else, where nothing's been happening, but I have also had a pretty steady flow of voiceover work. So, the adjustment is, it's one thing being an actor when there's a flow of opportunity, but when the opportunity dries up, it's a different beast. So that's the big adjustment, is psychologically, is like, when's our industry coming back? And like now, you know, there are green shoots, right? So like people are starting to schedule things for, you know, September, October, November, where they can safely. That's encouraging. But, you know, let's say you book something now, you're not getting paid till October, you know, maybe November, like so. But I think in many ways, like, actors are some of the most ready people for a moment like this, because, you know, if you haven't experienced like a long stretch out of work, you've not really been an actor. Like, you've had some like blessed experience that isn't really reflective of what it's like to be an actor. Like, and that's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of people. Your favorite famous actors will have had long stretches of unemployment. And hopefully you did enough work before that you can weather that storm. So, you know, the big adjustment, I think, was been like, I guess like being mentally robust to go, it is going to come back, right? You know, like, and being okay with that, and being okay with the idea that it might not for a very long time. You know, we're hoping that everything well, and we keep getting healthier and healthier and stronger as a country, and you know, and then we've got to figure out what happens in November and what the reaction to that will be either way. You know, how that affect us. I don't know, it's funny, like the pandemic, like, you know, everything's just like bigger than, like, you can't help but like be humbled by what's happening and all of the things that we're doing and all of the things we're trying, like for me anyway, you know, book more jobs and whatever. It's like, well, yeah, as long as the world works. Like, and if the world doesn't work, like, I'm not going to be, you know, I'll figure it out. Like, you know, but I think like the big adjustment is like, I mean, I don't know, where's this conversation going now? I think like, this is a good segue into like, what else are you doing? Mm-hmm. So you want to be an actor, great. All right, what's your other thing?
Yeah.
Not because I don't believe you're gonna win an Emmy someday. I just know for a fact you're gonna be out of work. I just know it. And if I could go back 20 years, or like, I don't know, quite 20 years, I shouldn't do that to myself, 18 years, and be like, well, how would I insulate myself against like the drop-offs in work that you experience? Like, I've done a lot right, you know, but I would definitely have written more earlier. I definitely have been writing more and finding out what stories I want to tell, you know, and I would have, you know, but I was lucky in that when I moved to America, like, very quickly after I arrived, I started recording audiobooks, and it kind of fell into my lap a little bit, and then I just kept doing them, and then I've always been doing them. So when this thing happened, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm just doing more audiobooks now. But that's because I built that business over 10 years, you know. And then I just did an animated series for AMC, yes. Which was really great, playing Rosemary DeWitt's boyfriend in a show called Pantheon. And again, like, that was awesome. But again, like, it's work begets work in that situation. And I think, like, you know, but I had like a voiceover, I have a voiceover agent, and you know, I'm lucky that I was already in that club, because I know there's a lot of actors right now who would love to be doing voiceovers, but they just can't get in. It's because so many people want to do it, because the thing that's happening is the voiceover work is still going, right? So, but I think, like, I guess unfortunately, like, the pandemic, you have to adjust your expectations about what's possible in the next, I would say, in the next 6 months.
The other question that was submitted is the mistakes that you've learned to avoid, because you just said that if you were thinking back, you would write more, so you would concentrate more on that craft. Something else that you also could share that you've learned that you do differently?
What are the mistakes I've made? I don't know. I don't really have regrets. Any. Like, you know, I think, like, I mean, this isn't a mistake I've made, really, that I'm aware of. Maybe I have, but, like, you know, be nice to everyone. Be really nice. Be kind. Like everyone's working their ass off for not enough money, you know. And if you're an actor, definitely not as much as you. Like, and like, just be really nice. And especially on the little jobs. On the little jobs aren't flashy ones. You know, like, all those people, like, I know people, like, who I met really early in my career, who were like assistant directors or fellow actors on, like, plays that I did at theaters, productions that no one remembers, right? They are running theaters right now. They're like heads of departments at the BBC. Like, you know, like, and if you weren't nice to them, right, you wish you were now, right? Because now they can, like, help you out. And that's not a reason to be nice to people, but it is just true. Like, everybody has potential. And you're in a business where it's so hard. It's not a meritocracy, right? It just isn't. Like, it's important to be really, really good, to be as good as you can be, to work hard to be as good as you can be. But being nice to people, being kind to people, will really pay you back massively. And then what happens is that, you know, I'm not just talking about getting jobs. I'm talking about, like, you know, you talk about, like, preserving energy and like, you know, getting through scenes and staying in character and all of that. Well, you know what? If you're really, really nice to people and you say, do you know what? Right now, I need some space. Is there somewhere you can fit me? I've done this a bunch of times, particularly on big emotional stuff. And you only get to do this if you have a bit of status on the job, if you're, like, you know, if your character's important enough or whatever. But even if you're not, like, you know, do you have a corner I can go in where no one's going to disturb me for a minute? Well, if you've been really nice to people, they'll make it happen, right? So I guess, like, don't make the mistake of not being nice to everyone you meet. You know? And I think, and then because then you get more of the things that you want. And I think the other big thing that I would say, like, and this is definitely, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but I would call it something that I've learned, to not do, is to is self-criticize, and to overanalyze what you did, right? I think if you can just, the more you can stay in the moment and think about the next right thing to do, and the next thing you're working on, whether it be the next audition, or the next acting class, or the next job, or the next scene, or whatever, like, the past is like, whatever you left on the stage, or on camera, or whatever, it's just, there's nothing there for you. There's nothing there for you. You know, I think the more you can work on getting to a place where you don't judge the work that you did, which comes from being really over prepared, then the happier time you're going to have when it comes to acting. And I think, like, in the end, it's so subjective. Like, even our favorite films, someone else doesn't like them. And so the idea that you would be the perfect judge of your own work is just absurd. So don't do it. Like, just let it go. Like, it's just a scene. Just let it go. It doesn't matter. It's just an audition. You know, and like, there'll be a million more auditions. It'll never be your last audition, unless you want it to be. But, like, it'll never be your last audition. So let's say an audition goes badly. Like, go, well, why did it go badly? It won't be because you're a bad actor. It'll be because you weren't prepared enough. Maybe that's not your fault. Maybe it's your fault. Maybe you can do something about that next time. Maybe you can help yourself be more prepared. Or it might be because you reacted in a certain way. I've certainly had auditions where I reacted badly to something that happened in the room. But then if I think about that versus, but without judgment, think about, well, why did that happen? You know, almost always, sorry, there's a helicopter going past, but almost always it's because there was something else going on. Most of the time it was because I was putting too much pressure on myself, and so everything was a bit too tightly wound, you know. Something. Well, I wasn't in that playful space. It should always be the goal to be in the playful space. The more playful you are, the more fun you are, and the more free you are, and the more authentic you are, and everything's better. And sometimes it's harder to do that depending on the room that you're walking into. But one thing that you should definitely work on being better at, and you'll never achieve it, which is why it's a lifelong pursuit, is being less self-critical.
Well, no, that's fantastic advice. This is like a whole self-help, actually.
Yeah.
No, this is really great. Now, to end this fantastic webinar with a lot of amazing practical advice, who would you like to nominate as our next speaker to help others climb up the ladder in this industry?
Oh my goodness.
Well, someone who's already a role model like you are, so we need someone that we can learn from.
Yeah.
Remember it was an ice bucket challenge?
I remember
it's kind of like that.
Challenge. Yeah, nominate. I mean, I think someone like someone who has maybe like a really like Heather Lind, who played Anna Strong. Like,
yeah,
she's an incredible actor and really, really disciplined, and has done works with amazing people on stage, on film. Yeah. Like, I think she'd be a really great person. I nominate Heather Lind.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to reach out to her. Samuel, you are fantastic. a wealth of knowledge that we've gained today. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your help. And I hope that everybody who's been watching, you're going to make us proud and send us some really great accomplishments and great bookings. So thank you very much for your time, Samuel.
All right.